every day I forget that I have Ted Dance's number in my phone. Why the do I have
That might be the most badass sentence I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, just like this was not my dream growing up to have to be in contact with him. Like he's a cool guy, but like I never thought about that growing up.
First I got your voicemail, then I got you. We can meet in person or maybe on Zoom. So tell me what's your genre, tell me what do you do. I'd like to know the things that specifically make you.
Hello, I'm Tim Barnes. You are The Genre, and in every episode of this show, I ask someone about the first genres that inspired them, the first crafts that they pursued, and how they feel about that first pursuit. Now, this week, comedian, writer, and actor Yedoye Travis joins me on the podcast. He's one of the funniest people I know. He's also one of the more thoughtful people that I know. Not like he writes nice notes. I'm sure he does that in his everyday life, but he's just a real thinker, I feel like. And we talk a lot in this episode about, whether or not comedy should be on the same shelf as philosophy. Of course, you've seen Yedoye Travis on shows like Search Party and Mr. Mayor. He's written for Batman comics. And he's also written for shows like the recent revival of Saved by the Bell. So here we go. Here's my conversation with comedian Yedoye Travis. Always good to see you. It seems like you're always working on something cool. You're always in something cool. You're always creating something cool. But then you also seem like someone who's always intensely thinking and reading something incredibly interesting. Every now and then I see like a post about this like incredibly cerebral book that you're reading or something. Like you're a philosopher.
I wouldn't say that. I read philosophers. I definitely like to read philosophers, but I think I would like to do everything in my power to escape the notion that comedians are anything close to that. I don't know. I like reading. I like reading interesting stuff, but there are other people's thoughts.
Well, what do you think the role of the role of the comedian is simply to make people laugh? That's your firm belief.
Well, in the broadest sense, yes. But I also think that comes with a bunch of implications that comedians don't think about.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think you got to think about what people are laughing about. You're also telling them what's acceptable. Laughter has a social condition that I don't think people think about, especially in a situation where sorry, I just had my first meal of the day, so I'm barely getting my thoughts are barely coming together.
For the record, it's 2 p.m.
Yes, for anybody who's listening. But I think, we live in a time where people are more atomized than ever. And so we're not really thinking about like social cohesion when we go out to our little bullshit night on the town or whatever, wherever it is that we see comedians now. Yeah. But like one of the most valuable things I heard is that like everything is political and it's just a matter of whether or not you are doing it on purpose. David Wengrow said that. And I feel like that's a valuable lesson for comedians to take, is that like no matter how you feel about what you're saying, somebody believes it. Somebody out there believes what you're saying.
Yeah, nothing is like completely tongue in cheek to everyone.
Yeah. And so I feel like my attitude is shifted in that direction. I feel like I'm finding it harder and harder to just be funny. And like the more I think about it, the more I mean everything I say on stage.
Oh yeah.
I might say it in a silly way or whatever, but I don't say anything I don't absolutely mean or I can't justify,
As you age with comedy, it feels like you always start off sort of imitating someone. Then at some point, you're kind of projecting this idea, like I branded myself as this thing and this is that perspective.
Yeah.
And then you kind of grow out of that. The ideal is to get to the place where you are, where it's not you in some way seeking the validation of your laughter fuels this persona that I created, but it's more, this is what I want to talk about. And I hopped on stage and this is it. And it happens to be funny.
Yeah. And sometimes it's just not. And that's kind of fine.
So this, what you're describing, I don't know that that's totally not philosophy, but I understand why we
Well,
need to be able to.
it's the intent behind it, I think.
Uh,
You know, I keep bringing this quote up but I don't remember who said it, but that like comedy is the only art form where if it's bad, it's not what it is
oh
anymore.
yeah,
You know, it's not even comedy animore. Like bad music is still technically music. It does all the stuff, but
Uh,
like comedy is just like once you stop being funny, what the is this? You're just talking. And like so in that sense, you know, at the very maybe it's just not comedy. I don't know when it starts to branch into becoming something else, you
yeah,
know. But like, yeah, I don't know. Sometimes it's just what I think, and it'll grow into a joke over however many weeks or months, you know. I've just accepted that like I think if you have an actual worldview, people kind of reject that comedically.
what do you mean?
I mean that some people don't want to be shaken out of their reality, whatever their reality is, whether it's like to use like a false dichotomy, like whether you're liberal or conservative. I think people just don't want to be reminded that those labels exist or that they mean anything in the real world. You know, I think people kind of just want to exist in this space of just like, ha 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 ha, everything is silly and we're having fun, and it doesn't matter what we believe. And you know, I think if you live in reality on stage, people are kind of shaken by that.
Yeah, and it feels like the internet is in some ways involved with that because that kind of seems to be the underlying philosophy of internet comedy is that nothing matters and this is the consistent flow of it. Like, oh, this crazy thing, like the most insane thing you can possibly read, you can quote tweet with
Yeah,
some.
yeah, some like self-referential meme that you can only understand if you've been on the internet for the past 20 years, and you just like you live in this like meta reality of that we just have all seen that doesn't actually comment on anything anymore, you know?
Yeah, and sometimes I worry that because like stand up is mimicking the sense of a conversation, even though it's one sided. But as much as the philosophy of the internet connects with our real life reality, I worry if we'll be talking in fragments instead of complete conversational sentences. You know what I mean? Like at some point.
Yeah. I mean, we'll all be communicating like we're on LSD where we just like you don't
Ooh, yeah.
nothing was said, but like we're on the same page somehow, you know? You're just like this weird higher level communication that we just kind of know what's going on, and any outsiders are not gonna they're just not gonna be a part of it.
And if we're all wearing Apple Vision Pros, it's just someone on stage controlling what you see in it, doing stuff that you would do on the internet, but in front of everybody.
Yeah, speaking of which, where the did that come from? Am I the only person that feels like those just popped out of nowhere?
It does feel that way. I mean, I remember the trailer for it came out last year at some point, but yeah, how long were they working on this? It scares me.
Yeah,
It really does, and I meet a lot of people who aren't frightened by it.
yeah,
Um, and I meet a lot of people who are consistently happy about every technological advancement, and it makes me feel very strange.
yeah. I mean, it's like, first of all, we're absolutely living in hyper reality. Nothing is real anymore. Nothing is actually referring to anything. Like, I saw the day after the first thing I saw about the Apple Vision, I'm now seeing like the first guy doing his workday on the train, and he's just like
Yeah,
Tony Starking, like in space, like sitting on the F train.
yeah,
And I'm like, there's no way this is not a paid employee of Apple. This person just was out there.
yeah. I was talking to people the other day about how we are in the cartoonish future. We're living in it right now. Everything that you would write comedically about a like hyper absurd version of the future is our
Yeah.
everyday lives now, and we're just dealing with that. But the other thing about the Apple Vision Pros, before we dive into the, the heart of the show,
Uh-huh.
is that I think a lot about the fact that, because I love science fiction, I love the idea of like mad scientists working on stuff in their basement, even with like the technological advancements of a character like Batman. It's cool because you feel like a singular person made this device. But now it feels like we're getting these mass produced devices tickling that part of our brains like, isn't this cool? Because this is just for you, but it's not just for you. You can buy this in a store. But I think what is really cool to us is the idea that you could make this on your own, but no one knows how to make this stuff.
Yeah. In fact, Apple is like notoriously bad about letting people make and modify their. That's like their whole thing. They've been sued for that.
Yeah.
It's like, why are you?
But it's like, yeah, the devices inherently aren't cool because they're connected to everything. But the coolest idea in the world is that I made homemade Apple Vision Pros that is not
Right.
connected to your internet. This is my own.
I have my own internet.
Yeah.
It's just me. It's just like that sounds like you're talking about your mind. No. It's the internet. It's just me, and it's everything that I could possibly imagine. Your mind. No. It's on the computer. It's like, all right, man. I don't know what to tell you.
It's my mind, but password protected.
Yeah. Yeah. If I lose my password, I don't have access anymore.
So the first big question to ask you, Yedoye, is what was the first genre that called to you in your childhood, or the first thing that you were excited about?
Oh man, I don't even. Just a genre of anything.
Yeah, genre. It's intentionally vague. Genre of anything. Like for me, it was science fiction. I always like return back to that sense of like sci-fi's excites me.
Yeah, I guess it was comedy. Unfortunately, for better, for better or for worse. I feel like people know me as an anime guy, but like I think comedy got me before
Really?
I ever really got into anime.
At what age?
I want to say it was like it had to be first or second grade because I remember I did a book report on one of those little Eddie Murphy biographies. They had the little like super slim ones that's like like the size of a Wikipedia page when you were in school. So I read one of those and I wrote a whole like heartfelt little report about Eddie Murphy.
What did you like about it? Have you seen his specials and stuff at that point?
I think at that time I had not seen the specials. I just like knew him from like Dr. Dolittle and Shrek, like that, or like not. I guess Shrek wasn't out at the time, but like Dr. Dolittle, that was the first CD I ever bought, the soundtrack. So like, yeah, I'd never listened to music in my life. I just bought
A Dr. Dolittle album.
Yeah, because they had Same Old G is it by Genuine? Yeah, that was my favorite song on that. I call it an album. I guess it's not an album. It's a soundtrack. But like, yeah, I guess comedy was my first thing, man. I did stand up for the first time when I was 12. So like,
at a talent show or something like that?
Yeah, like a middle school talent show. And I had a friend on stage doing the rim shots on a little drum set. And then my music teacher, who was a dickhead, he was like, the rim shots were actually funnier than any of your jokes. I'm like, dog, you're a music teacher that can't sing.
But I bet that fueled you.
No, it didn't. It definitely didn't. I didn't do it for another 6 years. But I was blown away by the fact that a music teacher who can't sing and only plays Weird Al videos in class had the nerve to talk to a child that way. That was crazy to me.
It was always PE teachers for me. I never liked PE teachers.
Oh yeah. Well, for any particular reason, where they're just like,
well,
I feel like you're reading into connotations that I'm not giving.
Well, the fact that you have this is a specific grudge that you have with that one music teacher, but you're saying with the level of detail, like this person really sticks out to you still.
I mean, yeah, he was just like, I guess like, every rapper has that like the teacher said I wasn't going to be shit. I guess he's the only person in my life that ever really doubted me. in any kind of way. But it was weird. He doubted me in that way, but also was like, kept telling me like, you could be great at piano if you just started right now. I was like, nah.
But look at you now. Like, you're also doing music now, right? You play the bass.
Yeah. I do play the bass, but that was always kind of there, but I didn't really start getting serious about it till recently.
What was it about reading the Eddie Murphy physical Wikipedia? And what were the inspirations that led to like wanting to do stand up on stage at a talent show at 12 years old?
I mean, looking back, I think I liked the idea of Eddie Murphy more than I actually liked him. Because looking back, I don't think I knew anything about him. I had just seen him in a couple movies. Even until super late in life, I had trouble reconciling that like comedians could also be actors.
Yeah.
Even though I grew up watching Robin Williams, Jim Carrey, Eddie Murphy, and all these comedic actors, just something about they still felt very separate to me. So like I remember telling my mom I wanted to be a comedian for the first time, and I kept going back and forth like, no, I think I want to be an actor. No, I want to be a comedian. I could never make up my mind because I thought they were separate things. So like I don't think I really understood what Eddie Murphy did at the time. I just like, this is the great thing about American education. I was kind of doing it for the grade. But there was still passion behind it, obviously. I just didn't really know what I was talking about.
I mean, yeah, and the fact that that's like a coveted space, being so famous that people do struggle with that dichotomy, especially young people. But when you can't directly place them, you just know like fame is the biggest part of it. Like, oh, that's a famous person popping up in this movie.
Yeah.
And he did such, someone posted a clip from The Nutty Professor that I forgot about. I think it's like a daydream or a nightmare where he's like giant, as big as King Kong, and his giant hand goes in and takes out this little piece of chicken.
Uh-huh.
I remember seeing that movie and as a kid and not realizing that the Nutty Professor was also Eddie Murphy.
Oh yeah.
So that entire movie experience for me was funny, yes, but also I felt so sad for this fat actor who had to endure. And this is as a fat kid.
Yeah.
Like what?
Yeah, I think I understood that part at least. I understood that much early on. What I didn't realize for years, because like in my mind, I think Chappelle Show is the first time I ever saw Dave Chappelle. So like going back and watching Nutty Professor as an adult, it clicked that I had seen Dave Chappelle before that point.
Oh yeah.
In my mind, he kind of came out of nowhere in 2001 or 2 or whatever. But I remember rewatching that when I was in college and laughing so hard when like he's getting roasted at the comedy club. And the camera's like slow zooming into his face, and we just hear Dave Chappelle go, "Now we know it's eating Gilbert Grape."
Yeah, and it's I think about that scene a lot just because of the Will Smith slap situation. It's like the Nutty Professor with Jada in that exact scenario in a way, like a comedian on stage. Yeah, and Dave Chappelle's watching his early stuff is a surreal experience. Like you could put a black and white filter on it or put some record static behind it, and it sounds like it's not from the era that it's from.
Yeah, he sounds like he's like from Chicago in the 40s or something.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like he sounds like a different person. Yeah. I'm convinced he started smoking to like smoke that voice away.
Oh yeah, that tracks.
Like. I would probably do the same thing. I had some, I could see myself developing the same insecurities.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know.
So comedy was the first genre that called to you. I assume somewhere in between there you discovered anime. And then what was the first official craft that you would say you pursued? It doesn't have to be connected to comedy specifically, but that first thing that you're like, yeah, that's the first thing I tried doing, like really in the world.
I mean, I legit stand up for the first time at 12. That was like the first time I did it. But like, outside of that, I thought I was going to be an athlete at some point. I was like getting recruited in college to play soccer, so I thought that was going to be a career for a very short period. It was a whole discussion with my parents. I remember like this is the first time my parents actively doubted me. Is they're like, my dad was straight up like, "You're not that good to be a professional soccer player." I was like, "You've never been to a game. You don't know."
Oh wow, yeah.
And this
Yeah,
is
yeah.
not even like a my dad never showed up to my game. I went to high school out of state, so like
Oh
it
yeah,
wouldn't have
okay.
made sense. But yeah, it was just like this discussion, and then my mom went and paid the deposit to a different college behind my back. So I ended up going there because
Wait,
I
wait. I've never heard of. I guess this happens all the time, but that must have felt like quite the betrayal. I assume.
yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, and like looking back, it's like who cares?
Yeah.
I wasn't gonna play soccer professionally. Like even the school I was getting scouted by was a D3 school, so it was like there's no scholarships. I probably would have quit the team in the first year and just like done something else.
Yeah.
But like I would have been in school in Birmingham instead of Atlanta, which actually has a comedy scene. I can't speculate too much on how different my life would have been, but like,
Yeah.
made a big difference, obviously.
Do you think about things like alternate timelines and alternate universes?
I try not to because I know I get
Oh.
like obsessive about things. And so I'm just like, I ruminate a little bit. And so I'd be like,
Oh.
like, well, if I went over there, then this thing wouldn't have happened and I wouldn't have done this. I wouldn't have like felt up about this little thing and my life would have
Yeah,
been so
yeah.
much better. It's just like, no, I don't want to.
Yeah,
I
it's so
already, I, I already ruminate about the timeline we're in. I don't need to.
Yeah, and it always feels like such a personal thing, but it's almost weirder to think about the fact that everyone kind of does that. I always do it when I like accidentally break something or drop something. I
Yeah,
immediately think there's an alternate universe where that snap thing just didn't happen because it felt so
yeah,
close.
yeah. I will let myself do that. I'll have the like the moments of like, well, this was a canon event. This had to happen,
Yeah.
but but this little thing that's split off into another thread.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
praying for those people, but I'm not over there, man.
I'm from California, so I go back a lot, do a lot of driving, and it's amazing how often you kind of almost get into an accident. Just like that's just the nature of driving,
Yeah,
and you get over those possibilities really quickly. But I always pause and think there's an alternate universe in which that accident happened every time you're almost in a situation like that.
I mean, yeah. There's an alternate universe where I fell off a cliff and I am dead.
Wait.
I I I lived in California for a little bit. I used
Oh,
to work as a carpenter. I used to build sets for like commercials and TV. So I would only drive the like smaller trucks, the like stake bed truck, because I was not certified to drive anything bigger. And I remember I was driving to a site one day and I somehow was doing this by myself. I was like 22 with just like nobody else around, driving a bunch of like flats to this job site. And it was like up Mulholland Drive or whatever, one of these like winding roads on the side of a mountain. And the entrance into this job site was just like this little narrow passageway, like through a bunch of trees. And so I completely missed it. And I had never driven up this way before. I didn't know if there was anywhere I could like turn around at the end of this road. And so I just kind of stopped and tried to turn around. And I'm backing off. I'm like backing toward the edge of this road. And at some point, I just look back and realize, oh, there is no more road behind me. And I remember just like my heart kind of dropping in that moment. And kind of every time I think about it, my heart just kind of like just drops for a second. And then I just remember like just kind of turning back and like driving back the way I was going anyway. And I eventually found a little like roundabout and turn around. But like there's a timeline where I just kept going and I just kind of died.
Did that linger with you for a bit, like immediately after?
Yeah, it still kind of does.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a the physicality of it, the gravity of it, and I'm sure the visuals and all the emotions, it's all there.
Yeah.
Um, where were you personally at that point? Like, what led you to California? What led you to building sets? Were you doing comedy at the same time?
I was doing comedy at the time. Set building is what I did when I was in college. That was my work study program, and so I kind of just kept doing it. I actually met somebody out there who went to the same college as me and happened to run a fabrication shop, and so we just like crossed paths, and he offered me a job. So that was cool. Shout out, Matt. Thank you.
At that point in your life, like, it feels like such a dramatic moment. Was it in some ways a crossroads between then and where you are now?
Well, it was kind of like I remember my mom. I just graduated college, or I was just about to graduate college, and my mom wanted to like give me a graduation gift, but she was like, "How about we go on a trip to London? So you have all this family out there. You have cousins. We can go visit them, and just to celebrate graduating college." And I said, "No, I want to do stand up. Maybe I should go out to LA, maybe do some shows." And I had been doing it for like 2 years in Atlanta. So I was like, maybe I can just go out. And my mom interpreted that as like, I want to move to LA. And
Uh-huh.
so she kind of started speaking as though I was moving to LA. And I kind of took that as like license that it was cool for me to move to LA.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
didn't really think about it beyond that. And so I just moved to LA, sight unseen.
It sounds like you both psyopsed each other somehow.
Yeah, yeah, it was kind of unintentional. And just didn't really think it through. Moved out there, didn't have a good job lined up. I went out and was like not even selling solar panels. I was selling consultations to or signing people up for consultations to see if they wanted solar panels. And we did that out of a hardware store, which is where I met this guy who hired me for this job. And yeah, I didn't have a real job, didn't have a place to stay. I crashed on a friend's air mattress for a while. Then I stayed with another friend, Wes Van Horn, who went to the same high school as me in Birmingham. It's like I just knew his parents. So um and yeah, it was just kind of a mess. I was there for like a year and a half, just never really had a substantial amount of money, except for 1 week. I remember there was 1 week where I had like $1,500,
Wow.
and
What'd you
that was
spend it on? What'd you do? You just paid for stuff that you needed to pay for?
no. I was dating somebody, and we went on date. Actually, we went to New York. This is my first time doing stand up in New York, and we just went, crashed at another friend's place, and just kind of like behaved as though $1,500 is a lot of money.
Yeah, yeah.
and, and I was doing a stand up competition out here. I think, what was it? The Laughing Devil Fest, which I don't know if it
Oh,
even
yeah.
still exists, but
Yeah, I don't know either. But I want to track this a bit. Did you say that you're from Atlanta?
yeah,
And that so you did stand up at 12 years old in Atlanta, and then you moved to Birmingham. How much stand up were you doing in between that shift?
none. That was
None.
yeah, that was
Birmingham, were you doing a lot of stand up?
no. I've only done stand up in Birmingham twice. Still,
Okay.
um,
And then in LA, all of a sudden, you're doing a little bit more. It sounds like.
yeah. Well, so I moved back to Atlanta for college, and then was doing it there for 2 years, and then moved to LA for another like year and a half, almost two
Okay.
years.
And what was your mindset? Like, what were the goals? Was it amorphous and vague? Like, I just want, because I feel like there's there's an energy you can have as a comic where you're excited to kind of take on this mantle of it, of being a comedian.
Yeah,
And it doesn't, no one really knows what it means, but we all kind of accept that that's like, no one says, I want to be a dramatist. And no one, is.
yeah. I mean, I think my perspective at the time was like, I was one of these dudes that was like, I'm gonna save the world through comedy, like I'm gonna write the perfect joke and end racism or whatever. Like I was that delusional about it.
Don't scroll away. You Are the Genre will be right back after the break. You Are the Genre is an independently produced podcast, which means that I do this just for the love and for the great conversation. If you'd like to support it in any way, you can subscribe to it, give it a nice rating and review wherever you're listening to it. You can also sign up for the newsletter that's connected to the podcast. You can find a link to it in the show notes or at youarethegenre.com. There's a free subscription, which gives you things like daily jokes and updates on a few things happening in my life. But if you upgrade to a paid subscription, you get early access to episodes and so much more. I typically use this little break in the podcast to talk about something that I've simply been enjoying. And one of those things is a documentary you can find on HBO Max, or I guess we're just calling it Max now, called Movie Pass, Movie Crash. I started this and I thought, okay, this feels like your typical sort of documentary. We all know what the typical sort of documentary on a streaming service feels like. Okay, technically this is HBO and not Max. This is an HBO documentary, I think. But as the story kept going, this true story kept going, it became so much more fascinating. This isn't just about the brand Movie Pass. It's about the real human beings who created it and the other real human beings who sort of co-opted it and made it the Movie Pass that we all laugh about because of how it crashed. This documentary is about America, it's about Black America, and it's about capitalism. And I think everyone should watch it because it kind of changed my life, I think. So that's it. Keep supporting the podcast, and to do that, get all of the information you need at youarethegenre.com. Now, back to the episode. Where were we?
And as time went on, I just kind of like, how do you describe losing hope?
As time went on, so this is in New York now, I'm assuming.
Well, it started in LA. It was just a bunch of where I was like, this is if I ever go on Fallon or whatever, this is the story I'm telling.
Yeah.
Like a bunch of dumb Like I remember I did a comedy contest out there at Flappers. They have a contest where basically you do their open mic, and their open mic is a competition. So if you win the competition, I think you get a free pizza or something like that. Some dumb and I was broke, so I just ate pizza there for once a week for a month. Because I'm saying I won the competition every week.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
But like, once you win for a month straight, I think I don't know if you have to do that, or if they, or if there are other ways to get into the competition. But like, because I won 4 weeks in a row, they entered me into their monthly competition where then you start getting like cash prizes. I mean, obviously I was like, well, I don't have any money. I would like to be able to rent an apartment or whatever. And so I entered this competition where I think first prize was like $500. Second prize was a gift card to the club, a $50 gift card to the club. And third prize was like, you get like a bucket of fries or some like that. I won second place in this competition 4 weeks in a row.
So you got a gift card to the club 4 weeks in a row.
Yeah, because it was a bringer competition. So whoever brought the most people got first place.
Okay. Yeah.
And I didn't know anybody in LA at the time. So whoever brought the most people got first place. The understanding being that like they then vote for who they actually like for second place.
Yeah. Okay.
So
I'm connecting some dots now. You were really into sports as a kid, but your first real passion was comedy. Now you're at this point where there's gamesmanship involved in comedy. Are you a very competitive person?
I mean, in certain contexts, yeah. I wouldn't say I'm like super competitive stand-up wise, because like, I don't know. Maybe I haven't always had this perspective, but I don't think it really makes sense for art to be a competition. But I was just broke. Everybody has their subjective opinions on art, but I was better than these niggas. No. Yeah, it was just it was a necessity thing. And yeah, so I got, I'll say first place for all these competitions, but like I had $200 worth of gift cards to this club, and so I was just there all the time. And realistically, I probably could have made just like a livelihood out of
Yeah.
winning that competition every week and just coming back and getting another gift card or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
But
So you use that gift card on food, I'm assuming.
yeah,
At the
yeah, I just ate at the club. The last week of the contest, the prize was $2,000, and so now I'm obviously like, okay, well, I gotta find whoever the lives here that knows me. I gotta get in touch
yeah.
with them. And then of course, second prize was a $50 gift card to the club, and so I brought what I thought would be a substantial amount of people. I think like 5. And obviously this is like a 200-300 seat club, and the person who ended up winning was a woman who had like a guest role on Reno 911. She was not even like a
Yeah.
substantial character. She just had been on the show once.
And you think it was that level of recognition that
I mean, I think she was just local and like
got it? Yeah.
had people there, but like they billed her as being from Reno 911 because like people pad their stats early on.
Yeah. I feel like you have great access to your frustrations. The way that you're like, it's like laser, very accurate descriptions of like these moments of
Yeah,
not
I mean,
necessarily hurt, but like these moments stay with you.
I mean, yeah, that's my problem. One of my biggest problems is I always know what my problem is. So yes. That was probably a defining moment of my time in LA. It was just like kind of feeling like I think that was the first time where I realized that like being good at art is not the way that you become successful at it. To sum it up, put a button on it.
Got it. Yeah, like there's a game, there's strategy to it. Is maybe it's a good way to put it. Once you realize that, were there certain things that you've done? Because I think it's interesting, like you were talking about, a part of your interest in Eddie Murphy specifically was that he was someone you saw on screen, and then you're reading this book about him, and you're like, oh, he did stand up, and how you had some friction between, well, I can't be an actor if I want to be a stand up, or I can't be a stand up if I want to be an actor.
Yeah.
And now you're at a space where you do both, and you got to a point where you aren't a semi-regular. It seemed like you were a regular on Mr. Mayor on NBC.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even really know what to say. It happened. Yeah, it's weird. Like even that, I feel like it's kind of hard to describe my experience on that show because like everybody I worked with was great and cool, but I also hate LA so much. Just like that the experience of being back in LA for that show was like just very it was like they put me up in the Sheraton right by Universal. And so I just remember like I would be on set for a little bit, it was always cool, everybody was dope, and then I would go back to the hotel and just have like a minion peering over a mountain into my window, and I just like feeling like I want to die, like it would be so easy for me to just die in this space, you know.
And you're talking about an actual minion?
Like an actual
animated
giant,
not a piece of commerce, physical,
like whatever, I don't know what they make, those ceramic minion. But like it's just like peering into my room with this big eye. I would see it, but I would see it before I saw the sunrise. Like it would,
well, it feels like in a way that this was a moment of achievement from your childhood goals. And you get there and you feel imprisoned by a giant minion outside your window. Like,
I mean, it's like, you know, this stuff always happens once you've already kind of given up. And it felt like or like not once you given up, but like when you don't care anymore is like when you seem the best at what you're doing. Like when you don't, like something about people, they can smell when you really need it. And
Yeah.
at that point, I was just like, I was already in LA for something else before that, and I don't remember what it was, but it was like the day before I flew back, I got this audition, and I was like, okay, like maybe I'll do it if they under whatever conditions. I don't remember what I said. I was in a hotel and I couldn't find somebody to tape with me. I was like, maybe I'll do it if they'll like do a Zoom audition or something. And then they were like, okay, sure. They came back and were like the stakes just kept going. I know I said I always know what the problem is, but like I'm getting hazy on the details. But like the stakes just kept going up. It was like first they wanted me to send a self tape. I was like, I don't think I'll have time to do that. They're like, okay, how about a Zoom audition? It was like, okay, if y'all will read with me, then we can schedule a time. Fine. And then they upped it to like, okay, now they want to do a producer meeting. They just want to go straight to a producer meeting. I was like, okay, all right, sure. And then the next email I get is, actually, they want to do a chemistry read, and Tina Fey is going to be in the call. I was like, what do you want? Like, what? How is this like?
Yeah, and it feels like you basically have the job.
Yeah,
like already. Yeah.
Right. It almost felt like, it almost felt like I didn't have a choice. If you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they chose you, and now you have to, you know. Like I remember, even after doing that, I still was kind of like, okay, well, I've done these before. It doesn't mean anything. Like I had an audition where like I did in-person chemistry reads, and the director had explicitly told me he wanted me on the show, and they flew me out to LA and all this stuff, and I still didn't get it. So like I'm not fooling myself like this means anything. And then like I got back to New York the next day, and I wake up to an email like, okay, so what time should we book your flight for? I was like, what do you want?
Yeah.
And like I was mad at that point. I was like, this is just inconvenient. It feels like, you know, like I was just tired. I was like tired of trying. And this is also like when I started reading a lot and just kind of like questioning my whole like outlook on entertainment as an industry. And so I was just kind of like, let me just be in peace. Let me just be over here.
That has to put you in a strange mental space when you're still going out and doing shows. I feel like I identify with what you're talking about, and I've talked about it on the podcast before, but to get very quick about it, everything became very abstract and strange for me during lockdown when I was writing for The Tonight Show, and I'm writing things that aren't going to get an audience's laughter for a host who's in his house.
Yeah.
And I'm in my apartment, and it was just like I truly I deconstructed everything, and I feel like I'm putting myself back together. And in that process, there's a sort of peace that comes from the fact that, oh yeah, not a lot matters anymore, but I'm doing things with a little bit more intentionality behind it. And that's what I've been searching for the whole time.
Yeah, right. You start to like, I don't know. It's weird. It's like I don't think people like go into anything like explicitly wanting to be a person with no integrity or anything like that, or like or like no backbone or no morals. But I think just people just don't know, you know, like you don't go into entertainment because you know, and like, so I feel like I look back sometimes and just like at a lot of stuff that I don't think I would have ever done for any other reason than just it pays. You know, I don't fault anybody for being in entertainment. I don't fault myself for being in entertainment. It is what it is. But like, I definitely look back and just like, I don't view it as like a pathway to success anymore. I'm just like, okay, this is what I know how to do and it pays. Like, I don't view it as like an access thing anymore. Not that I ever really did. I never had really an interest in like meeting famous people and like and all this stuff. Like every day I forget that I have Ted Dance's number in my phone. Like, why the do I
That
have
might
it?
be the most badass sentence I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, just like I this was not my dream growing up to have to be in contact with him.
Yeah.
Like he's a cool guy, but like I never thought
Yeah.
about that growing up.
Well, there's certain people, we were talking about Dave Chappelle earlier, where, especially because there's so much footage, and there's a time where all of his Conan appearances are on YouTube. And I used to watch it out of fascination because
Mhm.
the person sitting at the couch talking to Conan in those early interviews is not the same person now, like
Yeah.
by miles. And it feels like, especially a lot of black comedians have this moment where they step out, like the Richard Pryor moment, where he had a couple of those, but where he was performing in Las Vegas and kind of said this and went to
Oh
to
yeah.
San Francisco for a couple of years,
Yep.
and you kind of reconstruct yourself. Yeah, I don't know. And I keep looking at this picture of Andre 3000 behind you, and he seems like someone who kind of represents a bit of what this show is trying to be about, where he has stepped out of the definitions of genre. He's still Andre 3000, but now he plays the flute. Do you think that sort of thing is what you've reached now? Like, you are Yedoye Travis, and you'll everything will have that energy no matter what it is. It's your project, and that's what makes it worthy.
I mean, I hope so. Definitely. But I mean, in the sense of like, and this is not like this is not gassing myself up, at least not deliberately, but like at least two people in the past week have called me the Andre 3000 of comedy to my face. But I think it's just because they don't know where I am most of the time. Like I don't like, I feel
Yeah.
like I've become very hard to reach over the past few years. I have a very guessable email address. Just like I don't respond to shit. I don't text people back very often. Just like I unintentionally became mysterious, I guess. But like, yeah, I hope that's what what I'm capable of doing, is just like doing that I want to do, and like people accept it because it's me. I also feel like I've done enough other that people don't really know me from comedy necessarily, or from stand up by itself. Like, I don't know, there are anime youths that know me from anime. There's like, or from
Comic book people.
anime. There's comic book people that know me from that. Like, definitely a smaller group of people, but they exist. People that are seeing me on Complex right now, or people that know me from my podcast Jaded Forum. Just like, I feel like everybody that knows me is so scattered in their interests that it's like I can kind of move silently and just like do when I feel like doing it.
So you don't have any major goals, no, any major like I'm doing all this for this specific thing.
Not really anymore. I'm just kind of like, as long as I can pay my bills, I don't care anymore. I'm just like, I don't know. My perspective has just changed. I'm just like, I don't, partly for personal reasons, partly for political reasons, but just like, I don't really see myself being happy if I constantly project myself into the future. Just like, let me just, live in the present and like be cool with what I got going on now. I think like I have friends in Atlanta that will tell you like I was always stressed about like what the next step was, or what was going to happen next, or where I was going to be in a couple years, and like how to get this opportunity. And I feel like I'm finally at a point of just like, I don't give a shit. I don't care.
Do you find that unsettles people?
I think people kind of don't know what to do with it. You have like reps, like agents and managers try to tell you like, oh, I see you're a big star, kid. You got it all. You're going to have it all. You got all this. And I'm just like, all right, man, who's hiring? What do you want? And they don't know where to put that, like they don't know where to put all that like fake energy, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you can kind of feel people sink when you're not receptive to like what you both know are fake compliments. I think I let people down a lot in that way. I'm just like I don't care what bullshit you're trying to sell me. I just like like is the Daily Show hiring or not? Like is Fallon hiring or not? Um, yeah, it's just like it's just become a very utilitarian thing for me. I'm just like I need money to continue existing, so either give me money or stop what you're doing.
How do you manage the fakeness that is required of you in certain positions?
I don't.
But you have to. You said you want to pay your bills. You
Yeah,
have to.
I think I've unfortunately lost that ability. You know, there was a point in my life where I felt very capable of doing that, but I don't think I'm good at it anymore. I think you get to a point where you're just like, what do you want, man? Like, what are you here for? Are you just here like why did you come to me? You
Yeah.
know, I'm not the most famous person in the world, but I have things that that I'm known for that I've done. So like, why am I going to be fake to you when you know a version of me already? You know, I'm not gonna assume that the version of me that you know is the nice, pleasant one when that's not what I project in most of my work. You know, like I had a situation recently where somebody was trying to pitch a podcast about anime, and they came to me because it was like drawing from a lot of that I've already said publicly. And they were in some ways they were trying to get me to just like reiterate a lot of I've already said. And so I was like, okay, here's how my thoughts on this subject have developed since I last put anything out. And so if I were to work on this project, here's what I would do. And it was like a very like real version of what I had been talking about years ago, like engaging with the political factors that like to be specific, they wanted me to talk about like Black people's relationship with anime, and I sent them all this stuff about how like anime and hip hop specifically, and I sent them all this stuff about how like anime exists in the US as it does because of a Japanese government initiative in the 80s, and you know the US uses hip hop as like a cultural export when they were trying to suppress it when it first came out in the late 70s and 80s. And so these things are kind of exist together as like a manufactured merger between these two state powers. And they ghosted me. I haven't heard from them in months.
Oh wow, yeah. Like whatever algorithm said, no, don't open this email or whatever.
Yeah, I'm just like, okay, well, you came to me, so I don't know what you thought you were gonna get. You thought I was gonna just regurgitate the same thing that I said and then you said to me for some reason, like why? Like, what is the point?
Wow. Okay. So I mean, the last question, I feel like you've answered this, but I'll just ask it in case the phrasing of the question sparks anything. But it's, what is your relationship to that first craft that you pursued now? The first craft you described as stand up. I think you've been answering it, but yeah, anything come to mind?
Yeah, I mean, I just view myself as a modern day philosopher. You know what I mean? No, I just kind of I still love stand up, but I think it's more the broader stand up and entertainment industry that I feel iffy about, in the sense of like the broad culture kind of exists in a reality that I don't really like being a part of. that makes me feel like I have to do so much legwork explaining my worldview just to get these ideas across that sometimes it feels like it's not worth it. But then when it works, then it feels so worth it. And so I'm kind of oscillating back and forth between like feeling like I'm the greatest comedian of all time and then feeling like I don't belong in this world, you
Oh,
know?
wow. Yeah. Well,
Um,
I guess what's your feeling about that feeling of I'm the greatest comedian of all time? Is that something that brings you joy, or when you have that feeling, are you the type of person who kind of stops and analyzes the underlying factors of it?
well, I think whenever I have that feeling, I also feel kind of like, because I don't feel like I'm doing anything groundbreaking or like crazy, but like it kind of makes me feel like, and there are like a few comics that I feel the same about. Like when I see them perform, I feel the same way about them that I feel about myself, and so it's not just me like exclusively self-aggrandizing. Like I am self-aggrandizing here, but like it's not always just me. But like yeah, when I feel that way, it just kind of reminds me of like it is a choice to like do it at that quality or that level. And I think most artistic things are a choice. I don't think anybody lacks the ability to do stand up at the level that I try to hold myself to or that my friends hold themselves to. I think it's really just like what your priorities are and what your goals are in entertainment. I think it's like, do you have any interest in doing this for its own sake? Like if it had no potential to make you money, would you still even be here? I think that is a big deciding factor in whether or not you are actually willing to engage with ideas as opposed to like just doing little jokey jokes. Um, which is fine, but I think there are people who do little jokey jokes in a way that's engaging with ideas. You know what I mean? I think like stand up is kind of descended into just like post a bunch of crowd work clips so people know that you're comfortable on stage or that you've been on stage before. And then, you know, in 6 months, you have 100,000 followers and you're selling out theaters or whatever. But like,
Yeah.
I mean, just like modern times are kind of like people are getting very good at marketing empty products, whether it's stand up or it's music or it's anything else. It's like the underlying factor is people are very good at marketing themselves, and then the product will come later. You know, it'll come from the experience of doing sold out theater tours. You know, that's where people are developing their abilities as stand up comedians.
Yeah.
It's like they're not doing the the little shit here and there. And that's not to say like I'm not the kind of person that values work for its own sake. I don't think that I think that's a bullshit, stupid concept that it has to be hard or it's not good. But I do feel like some things are just necessary to get to that point. Like if you want to be good at stand up, then you have to do the work. I'm not like trying to like fetishize work for its own sake. I'm just saying like,
You have to do it. It's a fact. Yeah.
yeah, yes. So yeah, that's my relationship with it. It's very, very serious. Again, I feel like I don't do jokes anymore. I'm just like serious all the time. I feel like I'm just kind of talking.
That's great. I personally get better at ending this podcast on a high note. So
I don't think you have
on this vibe with all
I mean, who's making you do that? It's your show.
No, I don't know. Yeah, it's we're all sold happy endings, right?
Yeah.
You need to come with your own line of realistic children's books.
Yeah. Nah, I'm not gonna do that.
All right. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, of course, man.
Big thanks to Yedoye Travis for stopping by. For more information about him, how about follow him on Instagram at Yedoye_. Freddie Nunez created and sings the You Are the Genre theme song, and Adam Smith produced it. Next week, culture writer Maggie Sirota joins me on the podcast. but you can listen to it a week ahead of the normies by becoming a paid subscriber to my newsletter. This is Tim Barnes signing off with your weekly reminder that you are the genre.
First I got your voicemail, then I got you. We can meet in person or maybe on Zoom. So tell me what's your genre, tell me what do you do. I'd like to know the things that specifically